The massive vessel appeared without warning, materializing just beyond Earth's moon. Its hull gleamed with an iridescent blue that defied Earth's telescopes, seeming to shift between solid matter and energy. The ship was unlike anything humans had ever seen, sleek yet impossibly large, stretching nearly 20 kilometers from end to end. Commander Park Jin-ho stood frozen in the control room of the International Space Defense Force headquarters beneath Mount Fuji. The morning had begun like any other. He had reviewed satellite data, checked in with orbital platforms, and poured his third cup of coffee. Then every alarm in the facility had triggered simultaneously. "Status report," Park ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos of the command center. "Unknown vessel appeared at lunar distance exactly 6 minutes ago," Major Song replied, fingers flying across his console. No warp signature, no approach vector. It simply appeared. Park studied the swirling patterns on the vessel's surface. They reminded him of ocean currents seen from space, but metallic and somehow alive. Weapons status. Lieutenant Kim Dae-yun shook her head, her normally composed face showing rare concern. "Sir, targeting systems cannot lock. Lasers deflect, and missiles would be ineffective at this range." She hesitated before adding, "Our most advanced weapons systems can't even register it as a solid object." Park reached for the secure line to contact world leaders when Kim's console lit up with a new alert. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," she reported, her voice steady despite the tension in the command center. "It's directed to all major broadcast frequencies simultaneously. They're requesting, no, demanding, a meeting with Earth's leadership at the United Nations headquarters in 2 hours. 2 hours? Park's eyebrows shot up. That's impossible. Many world leaders couldn't reach New York in that time. As if responding to his words, the main screen changed to show a real-time satellite image of smaller crafts deploying from the mothership. They were headed toward major capitals around the world. "They're not waiting for our leaders to come to them," Kim whispered. "They're collecting them." Within 90 minutes, the impossible had occurred. Every major world leader had been transported to New York. Some arrived confused, others outraged at being removed from their offices or homes without consent. The smaller alien crafts had simply appeared, engulfed the leaders in fields of shimmering blue light, and vanished. The UN General Assembly Hall buzzed with fear and confusion. Security forces stood helpless, their weapons removed by the same technology that had transported the world leaders. Cameras from every major news network focused on the empty podium at the front of the hall. A flash of light, and he was there. He called himself Ambassador Ta. Tall and slender with metallic skin that rippled like mercury, he spoke perfect English in a voice that seemed to resonate from everywhere at once. His eyes were milky white with no visible pupils, and his fingers were too long, with one extra joint that bent in disturbing ways as he gestured. "Representatives of Earth," Ta began, his voice causing the microphones to emit feedback before technicians frantically switched them off. "Your presence here is appreciated but was not required for this message." The assembly hall fell silent. Even the whispers stopped. "Earth has been monitored for centuries," Ta announced to the assembled leaders. "The galactic hegemony has determined your species poses a significant threat to cosmic stability. Your technological advancement rate exceeds safety parameters." President Yoon of South Korea was the first to recover his composure. He stood, straightening his tie, and approached the translator's microphone. "Ambassador, we welcome contact with your civilization. We have no hostile intentions toward any civilization beyond Earth. Humanity has only just begun to explore our own solar system." Ambassador Tae's features remained impassive. "That is what all dangerous species claim." His head tilted slightly. "It is not your current capabilities that concern us, but your potential. Your kind developed from splitting atoms to manipulating quantum states in less than a century. Your artificial intelligence systems are approaching integration with your biological forms. Your genetic engineering exceeds safety protocols." Several leaders began speaking at once, but Tai raised a hand. The sound in the room simply vanished, as if someone had pressed a universal mute button. The hegemony's protocol is clear: one formal warning before action is taken. When sound returned to the room, the Secretary General stepped forward. "What exactly are you warning us against? What action will be taken?" Tay's skin rippled, patterns of light moving beneath the surface like circuitry coming alive. "Your species must accept limitation. Your development must be contained and guided. Those who cannot be guided must be removed." The screens around the assembly hall activated on their own, showing images of planets, beautiful worlds with rings, water, forests, all seemingly habitable. Then one by one, the images changed to show the same worlds barren, cracked, or entirely shattered. These civilizations received the same warning. Some chose defiance. In orbit above Earth, 3 smaller vessels detached from the main ship. They positioned themselves equidistant around the planet and began to glow with the same iridescent blue as the mothership. Back in the command center, Commander Park watched the alien deployments with growing horror. "What are they doing?" Lieutenant Kim's voice wavered for the first time. "Energy readings are off the charts. They appear to be creating some kind of field around the planet." On screens worldwide, Ambassador Ta concluded his message. "You have one rotation of your planet to consider. Tomorrow we will return for your answer. The choice is simple: guided limitation or removal." His form began to shimmer. "The hegemony has found that one warning is sufficient. There are never 2. With that, Ambassador Ta vanished, leaving behind a room of stunned leaders and a world holding its breath, wondering if tomorrow would be Earth's last day. 24 hours after the first appearance of Ambassador Ta, the world leaders gathered again in the United Nations Assembly Hall. The room was different now. Additional security measures had been hastily installed. Not that anyone believed they would make any difference. Scientists and military advisors from every nation crowded the observer galleries. The air felt heavy with dread. At exactly noon, Ambassador Tai appeared once more. This time, he brought 3 others of his kind. They stood behind him like statues, their metallic skin reflecting the lights of the chamber in hypnotic patterns. "The terms are non-negotiable," Ambassador Ta continued as if their previous meeting had never ended. "Earth will surrender all nuclear weapons, limit technological development according to hegemony guidelines, and accept oversight from our representatives." The Secretary General cleared his throat. "May we see these guidelines? We need to understand what limitations you're imposing." One of the beings behind Ta stepped forward. It raised a hand, and a 3-dimensional projection appeared in the center of the room. The document rotated slowly, written in dozens of Earth languages simultaneously. Section 1 prohibits artificial intelligence development beyond basic assistance functions, Tai explained. Section 2 limits space travel to within your solar system. Section 3 restricts genetic modification to disease treatment only. Section 4 requires all nuclear materials to be surrendered to hegemony control. The projection continued rotating, revealing hundreds of pages of restrictions. The room filled with murmurs as leaders began to understand the scope of the demands. "This would set humanity back decades," the European Union president said. "You're asking us to abandon technologies that help millions of people." "We are asking nothing," Tai replied coldly. "We are informing you of the conditions for your continued existence." In her office at the Global Intelligence Agency headquarters, Director Li Jiwu watched the broadcast on her main screen. Her secondary monitors displayed real-time data from world financial markets. As the aliens' demands became clear, markets plummeted. Shanghai down 42%, New York down 37%, London down 45%. The global economy was in free fall. "You have 30 standard days to comply," Ta concluded. "After which, if terms are not met, planetary sterilization will commence." The assembly erupted in shouts and questions, but the aliens simply vanished, leaving behind only the rotating document of restrictions. Director Li switched off the broadcast and turned to her team. "I want every satellite we have watching those ships, every communication intercepted, every piece of data analyzed. "What are we looking for?" her deputy asked. "Weaknesses," Lee replied. "Everyone has them." Dr. Kang Min rubbed her eyes and leaned back from her computer. The lab was quiet at 3 a.m., with only the hum of servers breaking the silence. For 3 days, she had analyzed recordings of Ambassador Te's speeches, breaking down every syllable, every micro-movement. As Earth's leading xenolinguist, she had been immediately assigned to the contact team after the aliens' arrival. While politicians argued about compliance and generals planned hopeless defense strategies, Kang focused on understanding their visitors. She reached for her cold coffee just as Dr. Han Jun entered the lab, carrying 2 fresh cups. "Please tell me that's real coffee," she said. Han handed her a cup. "The real stuff. I bribed the security team." He pulled up a chair next to her. "Any progress?" Kang nodded slowly. "Do you see it?" she asked, playing a section of the recording again. There are micro-expressions when he mentions the hegemony's power. His vocal patterns shift. Han leaned closer to the screen. Kang had isolated Ta's face during several key phrases, highlighting subtle changes in the metallic features. "I see something," Han admitted, "but I'm not sure what it means." "It's tension," Kang explained. "When life forms lie, even alien ones, certain patterns emerge. Slight hesitations, physiological changes. I've compared his baseline speech patterns to these moments." She played another clip, this time showing a thermal image overlay. When Tai mentioned the full might of the hegemony, slight temperature increases appeared around what might be called his throat. "What are you suggesting?" Dr. Han asked. Kang took a deep breath. "I think he's lying about something fundamental. The hegemony might not be what it claims to be." Han looked skeptical. "That's a big leap from some micro-expressions." "Is it?" Kang pointed to another screen showing linguistic analysis. His language becomes more formal, more rehearsed when discussing hegemony power. It's like he's reciting rather than speaking naturally. She stood up and paced the small lab. "Think about it. If they're as powerful as they claim, why give us 30 days? Why not just take what they want immediately? And why these specific restrictions? They're targeting our most promising technologies." "Maybe they're being merciful," Han suggested. "Or maybe," Kang said, her eyes bright with sudden clarity, "they're afraid of us." Their conversation was interrupted by a security alert on Kang's computer. Director Lee was requesting an immediate video conference. When the director's face appeared on screen, her expression was grim. "Dr. Kang, Dr. Han, I need your analysis immediately. We've intercepted communication between the alien vessels." "You cracked their language?" Kang asked, surprised. "No," Lee replied. "They're speaking Korean." Kang and Han exchanged confused looks. "Not modern Korean," Lee continued. "It's an ancient dialect, almost forgotten. And they don't know we're listening." The implications hit Kang like a physical force. "They've been here before." Lee nodded. "And there's more. They're arguing among themselves. Something about maintaining the deception and reporting to the actual authority." "I knew it," Kang whispered. "The hegemony isn't what they claim." "We need proof," Han said. "Something concrete we can use." Director Lee's face hardened with determination. "Then find it. You have 30 days before they either destroy our world or we discover they can't." The Jeep bounced over the rough mountain road as Dr. Kang Min clutched her tablet computer to her chest. Behind their vehicle, 2 more military Jeeps followed, carrying her small team of researchers and security personnel. The narrow path wound through the misty Korean mountains toward an ancient temple complex rarely visited by tourists. "Are you sure about this?" Director Lee asked from the seat beside her. The intelligence chief had insisted on joining this expedition personally after Dr. Kang had shared her discoveries. "The ancient texts are clear," Kang replied, pulling up images on her tablet. "These carvings from the Silla dynasty describe visitors from the sky who came in shining vessels. They match descriptions from Peru, Egypt, and Mesopotamia from the same time period. What had started as linguistic analysis had quickly expanded. After intercepting the aliens' communications in ancient Korean, Kang had begun searching historical records for evidence of previous contact. The patterns were unmistakable once she knew what to look for. "And you believe there's technology hidden at this temple?" Lee asked. "Not just any technology," Kang said as the temple came into view. "A way to fight back." The temple complex stood silent in the morning mist. The caretaker monks had been evacuated under the pretense of security concerns. Only the wind through ancient stone archways greeted them. Officer Bak Jun, head of security for the mission, approached with his hand resting on his sidearm. "Perimeter is secure, Director. No signs of surveillance, alien or human." "Good. Let's move quickly," Lee ordered. Dr. Kang led them to the main prayer hall. The texts mention a chamber beneath the central altar stone, one that was sealed by the sky visitors themselves. Engineer Choi Sung examined the massive stone altar. "There's no visible mechanism. How do we move it?" Kang studied the ancient carvings surrounding the altar. "These symbols, they appear in multiple ancient sites worldwide." She traced a particular pattern with her finger. "This one represents activation or opening." As her finger completed the pattern, a faint hum filled the temple. The stone altar began to move on its own, sliding sideways to reveal stone steps descending into darkness. "Motion detectors." After thousands of years, Engineer Choi whispered in disbelief. "It's definitely not human technology." Choi continued as they descended the stairs, lights from their equipment revealing a chamber untouched for millennia. The walls were covered in markings that seemed to shift under direct light, and at the center stood a metallic console covered in unfamiliar symbols. "Nobody touch anything," Director Lee ordered. "Dr. Kang, what are we looking at?" Kang approached the console slowly. The text called this the Speaking Stone. It was supposedly left by friendly visitors to contact them if the false gods ever returned. "False gods," Lee repeated. "The hegemony." "I believe so." Kang studied the console. The symbols matched those she had identified in ancient manuscripts. One particular symbol appeared repeatedly, a spiral pattern that ancient texts associated with communication. "I think this is an activation sequence," she said, pointing to a series of symbols. "Based on the manuscripts, these patterns should activate the device." Director Lee nodded grimly. "We're running out of time. The world leaders are meeting tomorrow to vote on the hegemony's demands. Do it." Kang carefully pressed the symbols in sequence. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire chamber hummed to life. Lights within the walls activated, and the console began to glow with an inner light. When they activated the device, a holographic figure appeared above the console, a being with translucent skin and 6 limbs who introduced herself as Nara of the Sylphids. Her body seemed composed of light and water, flowing and changing even as she maintained a humanoid upper form. "After so long, the beacon is activated," Nara said, her voice like chimes in water. "You seek the Guardians." Dr. Kang stepped forward. "We seek help. Earth is threatened by those who call themselves the Galactic Hegemony." The holographic figure flickered slightly, its expression changing to one of concern. "The hegemony has found you, then," Nara said. "They are not what they claim. There is no great empire, only a confederacy of raiders who prey on developing worlds." The humans exchanged glances. Kang felt a surge of validation. Her theory had been correct. "They've given us 30 days to surrender our technology and resources," Director Lee explained. "They threaten to destroy our planet if we refuse." "An empty threat," Nara replied. "The same one they have used on hundreds of worlds." "Have they destroyed planets before?" asked Security Officer Bak Jun, his professional composure cracking slightly. "Never," Nara answered. "The threat alone achieves their goals. They seek technology, resources, and occasionally conscripts. Their power is limited. They control perhaps 12 systems, not the thousands they claim." How do they maintain this deception? Engineer Choi asked. Surely other worlds have challenged them. Fear is powerful, Nara explained, and few developing worlds have the means to communicate with others who have faced the hegemony. Those who resist are typically isolated, told they are the only ones foolish enough to challenge galactic authority. Who are you? Dr. Kang asked. Why would you help us? The Sylphids were among the first worlds the hegemony attempted to conquer, Nara explained. We resisted and have worked since then to protect other developing civilizations. We left these communication nodes on promising worlds, hoping they would be discovered when needed. As Nara spoke, the hologram expanded to show images of the hegemony ships. Areas were highlighted, revealing structural weaknesses and technological systems. Their ships are designed to intimidate, not to fight prolonged battles, Nara explained. Their weapons are powerful but limited in number. Their shields cannot maintain full coverage during energy projection. Dr. Kang felt hope spark for the first time since the alien arrival. Will you help us? We already are, Nara replied. The console suddenly ejected a small crystalline device. This contains the technical specifications of their vessels and communication frequencies. It also includes a signal that will summon a Sylphid observation craft that has been monitoring this sector. Director Lee stepped forward. Why not come directly? Why wait until now? Non-interference is our principle, Nara explained. We provide knowledge and support, but each world must stand on its own. The hegemony violated this principle long ago. The hologram began to fade. Use the knowledge wisely. You have little time. The hegemony is weak, but only if confronted with unity and courage. As the hologram disappeared, Dr. Kang picked up the crystal device. It felt warm in her hand, pulsing slightly like a heartbeat. Can we trust them? Officer Bake asked. We don't have much choice, Director Lee replied. But this confirms what Dr. Kang suspected. The hegemony is bluffing. Dr. Kang carefully placed the crystal in a secure container. Then it's time to call their bluff. The United Nations Hall buzzed with tension on the 30th day. World leaders sat in grim silence as technicians made final adjustments to the massive screens. Military personnel lined the walls, their faces showing the strain of weeks without sleep. In orbit, Earth's remaining military satellites maintained constant surveillance on the hegemony vessels. Director Lee stood in the back of the hall, speaking quietly into her secure communication device. All units in position. Yes, Director, came the reply from Commander Park. Defense platforms are ready. Captain Yu reports all ships are in position, with Sylphid modifications installed. And our special guest, arriving now through the secure entrance. Dr. Kang Min entered the hall through a side door, escorted by Officer Bak Jun and 2 other security personnel. She wore a simple dark suit, her hair pulled back tightly. In her hand, she carried what appeared to be an ordinary tablet computer. Only those who knew would recognize the Sylphid crystal integrated into its frame. The Secretary General approached them. Dr. Kang, are you certain about this? If we're wrong. We're not wrong, she replied with quiet confidence. The Sylphid information checks out completely. Their ships match the specifications exactly. A flash of light interrupted them as Ambassador Tai and his 3 companions materialized at the front of the hall. The alien's metallic skin seemed duller today, less fluid in its movements. The period of consideration has ended, Tai announced, his voice echoing through the hall. Has Earth prepared its response to the hegemony's demands? The Secretary General stepped forward. We have, he said, then gestured to Dr. Kang. But first, our scientific advisor would like to present relevant information. Tai's pupilless eyes fixed on Kang. There is nothing to present. You will provide your answer. Submission or extinction. The world watched as Dr. Kang approached Ambassador Tai during the final negotiation session. She carried the small device supplied by the Sylphids, now disguised as an Earth tablet. Before Earth surrenders, Dr. Kang announced, her voice steady despite the tension. I would like to address a few inconsistencies in the hegemony's claims. Ambassador T's metallic features hardened, the flowing patterns beneath his skin becoming jagged and sharp. There are no inconsistencies. Then you won't mind if we broadcast this, Dr. Kang said, activating the Sylphid device. The room's screens flickered, showing intercepted communications from within the alien vessel. The voices spoke in various languages, ancient Korean, Sumerian, and others even older. The Sylphid technology provided real-time translation. Commander Huro demands more resources. This planet has better defenses than expected. Tell him to maintain the deception. We cannot afford a direct confrontation. The Sylphids have been detected in the outer system. If they make contact with Earth, the faces of world leaders transformed from fear to confusion to dawning understanding as the recordings continued. The aliens behind Ta began to shift nervously, their metallic skin rippling with agitation. This is deception, Ta hissed, but his voice had lost its commanding resonance. Is it? Kang challenged. We've analyzed your ships. Your weapon systems are impressive but limited. You have no planetary destruction capability. The hegemony controls 12 systems at most, not thousands. On screens worldwide, people watched as truth was finally spoken aloud. You've done this before, Kang continued. You identify developing worlds, isolate them, and threaten them with destruction. Then you take what you want, resources, technology, conscripts. But you've never actually destroyed a planet. You can't. Ambassador Te's composure broke. With a screech that shattered nearby glass, he lunged toward Dr. Kang, metallic fingers extending into blade-like points. Officer Bake intercepted him, tackling the alien with practiced precision. The other security personnel moved to contain Ta's companions, who were now shifting into more combat-ready forms. Now, Director Lee shouted into her communication device. In orbit, Captain Yu Jaiho stood on the bridge of the ESS Defender, Earth's first space warship hastily retrofitted with Sylphid technology. All vessels, engage according to Sylphid tactical plan, Captain Yu ordered. Target primary shield generators as identified. 20 smaller Earth vessels, previously hidden in the shadow of the moon, activated their engines simultaneously. They approached the massive hegemony ship from precisely calculated vectors. Their raising shields, Yu's tactical officer reported. Exactly as expected, Yu replied with grim satisfaction. Deploy EMP bursts at coordinates Alpha through Echo. 5 specialized missiles launched from Earth ships. Instead of detonating against the alien shields, they passed through specific weak points identified by the Sylphids, fluctuation patterns that occurred when the hegemony vessels diverted power to weapon systems. The massive alien vessel shuddered in orbit, its shields failing section by section. Lights flickered across its hull as internal systems fought to compensate. Back in the United Nations Hall, chaos had erupted. 2 of Ta's companions had been subdued, but the third had transformed into a whirling mass of metallic blades, cutting through the security cordon. Dr. Kang didn't run. Instead, she activated the second function of the Sylphid device. A high-pitched tone filled the room, and the alien froze mid-attack, its metallic form vibrating painfully. Sonic disruption, Kang explained to the stunned observers. Their molecular structure is vulnerable to specific frequencies. Ambassador Te, still grappled by Officer Bake, snarled in rage. You know nothing of what you've done. The hegemony will destroy your entire. There is no hegemony, Kang interrupted. Not as you've described it. We've been in contact with the Sylphids. We know the truth. On the main screen, the hegemony mothership was now surrounded by Earth vessels, its weapon systems offline, its engines dead. Several smaller objects could be seen being ejected from the ship, escape pods fleeing the disabled vessel. Your ship is disabled, Director Lee announced, approaching Ta. Your crew is surrendering. Your deception is over. For the first time, something resembling fear crossed Ta's metallic features. You cannot understand what forces you're involving yourselves with. The galaxy is something we're ready to join, Kang finished for him. but on our terms, not yours. The Secretary General stepped forward, addressing not just the room but the billions watching worldwide. Today marks the beginning of Earth's true entry into the galactic community, not as subjects, but as equals. In orbit, Captain Yu watched as a new ship appeared at the edge of the solar system. Unlike the harsh angles of the hegemony vessel, this ship flowed like water, its hull transparent yet somehow solid. The Sylphids had arrived. "Captain," his communications officer called, "we're receiving a transmission from the new vessel. They're requesting permission to approach Earth." Yu smiled. "Tell them they're welcome. I believe we have much to discuss." Sunlight streamed through the glass dome of the newly constructed Galactic Relations Center in Seoul. The building had been completed in record time, its architecture blending Earth designs with suggestions from their new alien allies. Crystal panels refracted light in patterns that mimicked the Sylphid homeworld's atmosphere, creating dancing rainbows across the marble floor. In the central chamber, representatives from 12 worlds gathered around a circular table. Some appeared almost human, while others were strikingly alien. The Sylphids, with their translucent bodies and 6 graceful limbs, seemed to float rather than walk. Former hegemony representatives, their metallic skin now dulled to a matte finish, stood under guard, their once threatening presence reduced to that of defeated warriors. President Yoon approached the treaty document at the center of the table. The paper was a symbolic gesture. The actual agreement had been encoded into multiple digital forms compatible with all represented worlds. This treaty establishes formal relations between Earth, the Sylphid Collective, and the representatives of the former hegemony worlds. President Yoon declared, his voice solemn yet proud. He signed the document with a traditional brush pen, the ink made from minerals found on all signatory worlds. Dr. Kang Min watched from nearby, still amazed by how much had changed in just 3 months. After the hegemony vessels had been disabled, Earth forces had boarded them using Sylphid-provided shields. Instead of the mighty army they had feared, they found a crew of mostly conscripted beings from conquered worlds, commanded by a small elite. Many of the alien crew had defected, revealing they had been conscripted through similar threats to their own worlds. Some had been serving for generations, their home planets believing them to be honored representatives rather than virtual prisoners. Ambassador Tai and his inner circle now awaited trial before a multi-species tribunal. Their crimes spanned centuries and dozens of worlds. "Does it feel real yet?" Director Lee asked, approaching Dr. Kang. "Not entirely," Kang admitted. "From linguistics professor to galactic diplomat in 3 months. My mother still thinks I work for a new government translation department." Lee smiled. "You'll need to tell her eventually, especially now." Kang touched the small badge on her label, the insignia of Earth's first diplomatic mission to the wider galaxy. "After I return." Dr. Kang stood next to Nara, who had traveled to Earth once it was safe. Unlike her holographic projection, the real Nara was even more ethereal, her body seeming to exist somewhere between solid matter and pure light. Together they watched as the treaty was signed by representatives of each world. "Your world did something unprecedented," Nara said quietly, her voice creating subtle harmonics that made nearby glasses vibrate. "You challenged them and survived. Many of the worlds they've subjugated over centuries are now looking to Earth for leadership." "We have much to learn about the galaxy," Dr. Kang replied, still overwhelmed by the responsibility Earth had suddenly acquired. "And the galaxy has much to learn from you," Nara said. "The alliance we're forming may finally bring stability to this sector." Kang watched as former enemies became tentative allies. The representatives of worlds that had been under hegemony control for generations now spoke directly to each other, many learning for the first time that they shared similar histories of deception and exploitation. "How did you know?" Nara asked. "That they were lying." Kang thought about those long nights analyzing speech patterns and micro-expressions. Communication is universal in some ways. Truth has patterns, and so does deception, even across species. "A valuable insight," Nara replied. "One that might have saved many worlds from centuries of domination." As the ceremony concluded, attendees moved toward the large observation windows. In the distance, at the newly constructed spaceport, the ESS Explorer stood ready on its launch pad. Earth's first official interstellar vessel gleamed in the afternoon sun, its hull incorporating both human engineering and alien technology freely shared by their new allies. Captain Yu Jeho stood at the boarding ramp, reviewing his crew manifest on a tablet. The crew was unlike any assembled before, a mixture of humans and representatives from 4 other worlds. Each brought unique skills and knowledge that would be essential for their mission of diplomatic outreach to distant systems still unaware of the hegemony's fall. "Captain," Dr. Kang called as she approached. "Ready for departure?" Captain Yu nodded. "All systems checked and ready. Our Sylphid navigation officer says we'll reach the Proxima system in 4 days. 4 days, Kang repeated with wonder. Just months ago, such a journey would have seemed impossible in a human lifetime. Engineer Choi joined them, pointing excitedly to modifications on the ship's engine section. The energy efficiency is beyond anything we could have developed on our own, and the Tellurians provided shield technology that can withstand solar flares 10 times stronger than our sun's. Officer Bake approached, now wearing the new uniform of Earth's Interstellar Security Division. Perimeter secure, Captain. Ambassador Kang. Kang still wasn't used to her new title. Thank you, officer. Final boarding in 30 minutes, announced the port's communication system. As the crew made final preparations, Dr. Kang looked up at the afternoon sky. Somewhere beyond the blue, the stars waited, not as distant, unreachable points of light, but as destinations and homes to new allies and friends. The hegemony's threat, intended to subjugate Earth, had instead catapulted humanity into a larger community. Their attempt to isolate one more world had resulted in the freedom of many. Captain Yu checked his watch. We should board, Ambassador. Kang took one last look at Earth, the mountains, the city, the people going about their lives, many still adjusting to the knowledge that they were not alone in the universe. Let's go, she said. The boarding ramp rose behind them as they entered the ship. On the bridge, humans worked alongside beings from distant stars, their differences forgotten in their shared purpose. Earth was taking its first steps into a larger community, not as subjects, but as equals. The end.